Billionaire discovers young girl in danger at night. What happened next is incredibly inspiring. As Charlie Harrington accelerated down the darkened streets of Ohio, the sounds of last night's charity gala reverberated in his mind. Flashes of praise from each polished face, incredible vision, so generous, echoed hollowly within him. He clenched the steering wheel of his sleek, black Tesla. The gripping sense of isolation within the opulence he'd amassed lay heavy on his chest, tightening like a vice. For all the wealth and acclaim, Charlie felt like a ghost floating through the corridors of his own life, disconnected from the community he revered. "You have everything, Charlie," his inner voice sneered, "yet you're utterly alone." Just then, a figure caught his eye, stirring a faint flicker of hope amidst his despair. Crouched on the sidewalk, it was a small girl, maybe 10 years old, with wild hair matted and a tear-stricken face. Panic surged within him. "I can't find my mom," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with desperation. Those words ignited something dormant in Charlie, a spark reminiscent of a childhood marked by struggle and yearning for comfort. He hesitated, the gravity of his own worries crashing against the urgency of hers. But something deeper kindled within him, pulling him out of the confines of his self-imposed luxury. "Let's find her," he promised, sinking to her level. He didn't understand why he felt so compelled, yet the flicker of purpose felt like an old friend. As they wandered unfamiliar sidewalks, Charlie found himself not just aiding a lost child, but reconnecting to feelings he had buried under layers of wealth. Dreams woven into the fabric of simpler times. The girl's name was Lily. With each step, as she spoke of her aspirations of becoming an artist, Charlie remembered the thrill of dreams he once chased with fierce determination. Yet shadows cloaked this whimsical ambition. Lily voiced fears of social ridicule, the burden of living paycheck to paycheck hanging over her like a heavy cloud. "Do you paint, Charlie?" she asked suddenly, her curiosity shining through the fog of fear. He chuckled, remembering a distant childhood filled with sketches of passionate young athletes. But did that passion linger anymore? "Not anymore," he admitted, struggling with a pang of regret. "But you should never give up." Deep down, his words felt like a hollow lie. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Navigating their way through the might-have-been paths of his youth, Charlie grappled with conflicting emotions churning within. Here he was, a billionaire battling against discontent and regret, forged in loneliness among clinking champagne glasses, while this child opened his eyes to a world of dreams littered with obstacles, dripping with authenticity. The weight of worry rushed through him. The scrutiny of his elite peers loomed like storm clouds awaiting a moment to strike. What if he failed? What if he couldn't uplift her, couldn't defy the odds? Could he really reach across the chasm of their backgrounds? He felt torn between the drive to help Lily blossom and the stagnant comfort of the singular life he created. Standing before her unsold paintings, embarrassment clawed at Charlie. They dangled in the gallery, taunting him, the angels of doubt whispering, would anyone ever see their worth? This moment, the anticipation of the next struggle, hung over him, tighter than ever. Would they forge a bond, or remain trapped within the limitations of their pasts, their identities destined to remain fixed like the frames around her vivid art? Charlie stood at the threshold of the gallery, enveloped by the unyielding grip of doubt. The colorful canvases hung silently, whispering stories of dreams that lay dormant, much like his own passions. He felt an overwhelming urge to confront his stifled aspirations. The world around him felt pervasive, a reflection riddled with inadequacies. "These are beautiful," he murmured to Lily, desperately seeking validation for her work. Her small frame shivered slightly, clearly unsure of herself in the face of his praise. The vulnerability in her eyes pierced through his guard, forcing him to confront the tension that had taken root in his own heart. "What if no one sees them?" she asked, her voice trembling. That question hung heavily in the air, an invitation to unearth both their insecurities. Charlie's thoughts swirled. He had lived in a world where visibility was a currency, where recognition meant everything. But here stood Lily, stripped of those privileges, fighting against a tide that sought to drown her dreams. "I know how that feels," he finally confessed, the admission tasting foreign on his tongue. "I spent years building my success, but sometimes I wonder if I'm even seen for who I truly am." In that moment of raw honesty, a connection sparked between them. It was one grounded in shared fear and yearning. Lily's small hand gripped his tightly, and for the first time since their encounter began, Charlie felt a weight lifting. Maybe his world of luxury was not so distant from hers after all. Perhaps it was made of the same fragile dreams, each suspended in the air, waiting to be acknowledged. Realizing he had a decision to make, he straightened, determination seeping into his bones. He could no longer float between the realms of wealth and aspiration without acknowledging the bright flame of ambition that flickered inside him. "Let's do something about this," he said, surprising both Lily and himself. "You have talent, and it deserves to be seen." Lily's eyes sparkled with hope, igniting something in Charlie that had long since dimmed. He embarked on a strategy, weaving plans together like threads in a tapestry. If he could leverage his position, perhaps they could host a small exhibition, draw in the people who had once praised his fortunes, but this time for something genuine. But that ambition unlocked a hidden fear: failure. What if throwing himself into the artistic community exposed him to the ridicule he had long since shelved? Each step forward felt precarious, as if he was teetering on a cliff's edge. Yet the thought of Lily's smile, the pure joy that radiated when discussing her art, pushed him to lean into the anxiety rather than shy away from it. As days turned into sleepless nights planning the exhibition, Charlie confronted the judgment of his peers head-on. Question after question emerged. Would they view him as a phony, a wannabe artist? He would risk personal credibility for the dream of a child. Yet while he wrestled with his insecurities, he noted a change within him, a thirst to redefine what success meant. Mornings became exercises in courage, each interaction with Lily infusing him with a sense of purpose. Plans materialized more quickly than he anticipated. He felt himself returning to the art of dreaming, a muscle he had long abandoned. He stood at the precipice of this new chapter, ready to leap, but beneath the excitement lay a gnawing doubt. Would the world embrace their endeavor? This was more than just an exhibition. It was a test of his evolving identity. Could he truly bear the scrutiny of his former life while nurturing the fragile dreams woven into existence through Lily's art? In those quiet moments before the big day, as he prepared for an inevitable confrontation with society's elite, he understood the stakes. It was not just about art, it was about himself. The moment of truth approached, a reckoning. Would they step forward together and claim their space? But then again, could he handle the backlash if it all collapsed? That thought hung heavily in the air, demanding an answer. It would not just be a question of failure, but a reflection of how far he had come. Life seemed to dare him to leap. The night before the exhibition, Charlie paced in the empty gallery, the vibrant colors of Lily's artwork contrasting sharply with the overwhelming darkness of his fears. Each piece, an expression of vulnerability and raw emotion, beckoned him to believe in their power. Yet the room felt stifling, shadows lurking in corners that seemed his doubts. He stood alone beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, and for the first time he questioned the motive behind this plunge into the art world. They had invested so much in this venture. Lily's hopes wove through each brushstroke. But insecurities clawed at him. What if everyone saw through his facade? What if they deemed them unworthy? The very thought sent waves of panic coursing through his veins. He leaned against a wall, his breath hitching. He considered the faces of his former business partners, the elite audience he had been cultivating for decades. All those years of crafting a reputation, and here he was, about to risk everything for an artist on the brink. An artist whose passion was untainted by ambition's poison. A sudden realization struck him hard. It wasn't merely about the upcoming exhibition. It was about understanding and reclaiming his own identity, one that had been dulled by the gray sheen of wealth. What had he truly sacrificed for the sake of success? As he pondered, Charlie felt heated urgency beat against his chest. This was more than a leap into the artistic community. This was a leap towards authenticity. He grabbed a note card from the desk, scribbling down the speech he would deliver. Just a few lines to express his gratitude to Lily and his invitation for others to embrace their own vulnerabilities. Aligning words with intent required transparency, a level of honesty he had long neglected. The weight of expectation pressed upon him again, but this time he struggled to flip the narrative. He had long feared being viewed as a pretender. The paradox was that by stepping outside the confines of his wealth, he could find a genuine voice. Once he thrived on the applause of the wealthy, but tonight he craved sincerity over superficiality. Should he stumble through his speech? Perhaps. But those stutters would unveil his human side. Maybe they would feel the same nervous energy he carried. Charlie continued rehearsing, his heart quickening with each repetition. The cacophony of thoughts blended into a new, tenacious piece. Maybe the world wouldn't embrace them, and maybe it would. All he needed was to convey authenticity. He could deliver the truth of his very being, one that had been buried for too long beneath layers of societal expectations. As dawn broke, a quiet confidence had nestled within him. He had tackled centuries of conditioning and redefined his personal mission, to promote art that spoke from a place of vulnerability and truth. It was a profound shift in his perspective. He wished to create an environment where others could dare to let their voices and visions manifest without fear. With every passing minute, anticipation mingled with trepidation. The gallery would soon come alive with art, laughter, and shared journeys. He resolved to acknowledge his doubts, to expose them rather than hide them behind bravado. The affirmation of personal growth wrestled against the whispers of his past. Then, just as he finished preparing for what was meant to be a memorable evening, his phone buzzed, illuminating with an unexpected message. It was from one of his old associates, a cutting remark about his descent into amateurism. Charlie flinched at the words, the familiar sting igniting a fire within him. This wasn't just about art. It was a culmination of every fear he had fought against. His next steps would solidify not just his place in this world, but the integrity he sought to build. Embody. What would he say to that voice of negativity? At that moment, the past was reshaping itself into a tool of empowerment, a catalyst for resilience. Charlie could feel the electric energy coursing through him. It was time for a reckoning. With determined resolve, he took a deep breath, ready to confront not just those judgments that lay ahead, but the deeper question in the forefront of his mind. How could he remain true to himself in a world resistant to change? The gallery buzzed with life, the air thick with anticipation as opening night unfolded. Charlie stood just beyond the entrance, anchored by a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. The soft hum of voices filtered through the throng of people, admiration rising like tides around Lily's pieces. Each canvas stirred a longing within him. They encapsulated monstrosity and beauty, whispering truths he had long buried. But would those truths resonate with the crowd? He could feel the weight of judgment inviting a familiar tension. Every laugh sounded mockingly, every compliment felt laced with insincerity. Anxiety clawed at his throat, a reminder of the suffocating mask he had worn for far too long. Yet, as he glanced around the gallery filled with inviting yet daunting faces, he fought against that oppressive sensation. He decided to embrace vulnerability rather than recoil. With each interaction, he gradually unveiled a new dimension of himself, shifting from the corporate facade to a man captivated by the raw edges of creativity. An older woman admired a particularly chaotic piece, speaking breathlessly about her interpretation. Instead of watching passively, Charlie engaged, sharing his thoughts on the artist's struggle to encapsulate emotion on canvas. Through their conversation, he rediscovered his ability to connect. Then came a young woman, her enthusiasm radiating as she pointed to an image that struck a chord with her. She spoke of the fight for authenticity in a world of curated perfection. Charlie saw reflection and recognition in her eyes, an echo of his past self, swallowed by expectation and polished perceptions. He decided to step deeper into the conversation, acknowledging her sentiments and breathing warmth into her passion. "Art is a bridge," he said, each word coming with deliberate intention. "It connects the hidden truths we often shun. Through it, we break down those barriers." As he spoke, he felt a small but powerful surge of clarity. In that exchange, he saw an opportunity to redefine not just how others viewed him, but how he viewed himself. With the crowd eager for more, the moment to deliver his speech loomed closer. He lingered on the edges of his confidence, feeling the familiar tug of self-doubt threaten to pull him into a dark void. What if the resonance and energy he felt inside failed to translate? What if he made a fool of himself? The shadows of his past clung tightly, whispering warnings, but beneath them flickered a new resolve. He realized the irony of it all. Confronting the ghosts of his former life meant shaking hands with the genuine echoes of who he had become. Charlie clutched that note card and took a small step forward, his heartbeat synchronizing with the ambient excitement of the crowd. Yet, even as he prepared to speak, the message from his old associate loomed large in his mind, a daunting specter of preconceptions and doubts. But what if, instead of being weighed down, he used it as fuel? He envisioned standing in front of them, revealing his flaws along with his growth. As he took a breath, determination coursed through him. This was about more than art. It was about stripping away masks to expose the authentic self lurking beneath. The very act of speaking could embody the transformation he sought. He stepped into the spotlight, facing the audience illuminated by a sea of expectant eyes, where vulnerability met opportunity. "Thank you for joining us tonight," he started, his voice steady yet tender. "I stand before you as someone who once measured success by wealth and prestige, but who has come to define it by authenticity and connection." His journey would unfold as he began to weave their common threads. What would he discover about himself as he shared his story? That promise clenched in the pit of his stomach, a fierce determination ignited by the mere thought of possibility. While he spoke, the thoughts lingered. Could he turn his struggle into a testimony of hope for others? Where would this newfound authenticity take him next? As he wrapped up his speech, punctuated with heartfelt passion and words that resonated, a single image flashed through his mind: the stark contrast between the polished suits of his past and the raw brushstrokes of the artwork surrounding him. How far could he go if he embraced this new perspective? The moment tugged at the edges of his heart, an undeniable invitation to journey further beyond mere vulnerability. The questions nestled within him, fragile yet alive. How would he respond to the judgment still clinging to him? How would he pave the way forward amidst ongoing uncertainties? The answers were waiting, shrouded in the challenges that lay ahead. In the stillness that followed his speech, Charlie felt a shift in the atmosphere. The murmurs around the gallery had transformed into something deeper, a collective consciousness sparked by his words. As the final echoes of his voice faded, anticipation coiled tight around him, and he was enveloped by a sense of unity with the crowd, a feeling he had long been deprived of. Yet, with newfound clarity came an unsettling realization. Vulnerability had not only laid bare his heart, it had also exposed the very fears he had tried to keep at bay. As others approached him, eager to share their thoughts, he sensed a peculiar dance of admiration and unease. What if they saw the man beneath the facade too clearly? What if authenticity only revealed weaknesses? An older man, sporting round glasses that glinted in the gallery lights, approached. "You're quite the—" "Charlie," he said, his voice resonating with a warmth that ignited hope within. "What you said about authenticity struck a chord with me. It's something we all struggle with, don't you think?" In that moment, hesitation flickered across Charlie's mind. It was all too easy to slip back into the armor of shrewd business jargon, to polish his image rather than nurture the raw edges of revelation. "Yes," he replied, his voice steady but layered with uncertainty. "It's a constant battle." "Then you're not alone," the man smiled, eyes sparkling with the truth of shared experience. "Keep speaking your truth. People need it more than ever." The older man's encouragement ignited something within Charlie, yet it also opened a floodgate of self-doubt. Each ongoing conversation made him acutely aware of how easily he could revert to his past self, a shadow of fear creeping into the mix. Regaining composure, he took a breath, strategically shifting his mindset. He wasn't merely an observer anymore, he was a participant in his own life's narrative, actively steering away from the familiar currents of cynicism and judgment. As he spoke with more guests, he felt a sense of camaraderie forming, a quiet acknowledgement of shared experiences, unraveling the ties that had bound him to insincerity. He found himself drawn to one particularly animated conversation, where a woman passionately articulated her struggles to balance personal aspirations with societal expectations. Her voice resonated with a raw honesty that echoed his own recent revelations. Motivated by her authenticity, Charlie stepped further into the exchange, delving into his story. "I spent years chasing ideals, wealth, status, because I thought that was what defined me," he confessed. The room quieted, the intensity of his admission catching them off guard. "But what I've discovered is that success isn't merely about accolades. It's about finding connections and purpose." As her eyes brightened, a knowing smile tugged at her lips. "That's exactly it. We weave our truth through experiences. By sharing our journeys, we carve pathways for others." The words struck him with a clarity sharper than any brushstroke Lily had executed. This was not just a personal endeavor, it was a collective movement towards growth and acceptance. Here, in this moment, he recognized the latent power of storytellers, those who dared to unveil their vulnerabilities. Yet, lurking within that realization was another sobering truth. How much of that pathway would be laced with confrontation? As the evening wore on and laughter filled the air, shadows of familiar figures from his corporate past flitted in and out of consciousness like unwelcome specters, reminding him that transformation rarely came without pain. What lay ahead for him would not be merely an exploration of art and creativity, but a deep dive into his own fears and the ongoing reconciliation of identity. He realized that facing these specters head-on would demand courage, And in that moment, Charlie understood he stood on the precipice of significant change. Driven by a renewed sense of purpose, he resolved to continue this journey of authenticity, understanding that real connections required wrestling with his past and facing those who had once shaped him into the man he was striving to escape. But who would be the first to challenge him? Who among the successful elite would question his transformation? Would they embrace or ridicule the new Charlie? As the mingling guests laughed and shared stories, a foreboding sense of anticipation threaded through the room, hinting at the trials yet to come. The time had come to confront the past and carve out a future filled with authenticity. The energy of the gallery buzzed with a mixture of enthusiasm and expectation, yet for Charlie it weighed heavily like an unresolved note in an unplayed symphony. He stood at the edge of the crowd, acutely aware of the personal stakes entangled with his revelations. The vibrant conversation swirled, yet within him a tempest brewed, conflicting emotions vying for dominance. As he leaned against a wall adorned with Lily's captivating artwork, he reflected on the evening's events. The transformative power of vulnerability unspooled before him like an intricate tapestry, simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Yet, as exhilarating as the connection felt, it was overshadowed by the daunting prospect of facing those from his past, chiefly Samuel, an old colleague whose skepticism had often cut him to the bone. The thought of their eventual confrontation twisted his gut. What if Samuel seized the opportunity to dismantle the fledgling identity Charlie was painstakingly constructing? The memories of their sharp exchanges replayed in his mind, the dismissive tones, the raised eyebrows, the legacy of a cutthroat corporate ladder that had defined so many interactions. "Charlie!" The animated voice pulled him back to the present. It was Lily, her energy vibrant and infectious. "Your words tonight, wow! They resonated with so many. You have a gift." Her genuine enthusiasm tugged at his heartstrings, and for a moment he felt buoyed by affirmation. "Thank you, Lily. It feels strange to embrace this side of me, though," he admitted, an inkling of doubt creeping into his tone. "Sometimes I wonder if it's all just noise." "We all struggle with that," she replied, her eyes glinting with wisdom. "But what you did tonight was powerful. You gave people permission to be themselves. That's not noise, it's clarity." Her words hung in the air like a firefly's glow, igniting a spark deep within. Could this be true? Was there perhaps a purpose behind facing his past beyond dismantling it? Charlie inhaled deeply, trying to ground himself amidst the whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, as he mulled over Lily's insight. If clarity stemmed from sharing one's truth, maybe it was time to confront Samuel, not to seek acceptance, but to empathize with the man behind the skepticism. "Are you okay?" Lily's voice broke through his reverie, laden with concern. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, attempting to dismiss the weight of his thoughts. But as he scanned the gallery, he realized he needed to get back on track. This was about more than just speaking. It was about living in truth, which required continual engagement with his layered past. "Maybe I can catch Samuel off guard," he muttered under his breath, a plan hatching, slowly but surely. The prospect both thrilled and terrified him. Would he be ready to articulate his newfound self? Or would his old wounds fester upon confrontation? Sensing the shift in Charlie's demeanor, Lily placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Remember, it's not about impressing anyone. Just be yourself. That's what people will connect with." Determined, he thanked her and made a mental note to reach out to Samuel, however daunting it felt. The act itself was a leap into the abyss of uncertainty. It was a chance to reclaim parts of himself buried under layers of pretense, a door swinging open to honesty. As the crowd began to thin, Charlie felt the walls of the gallery closing in, but this time it was different. The walls were not barriers, but rather mirrors reflecting his evolution, an evolving narrative that had yet to be fully written. With each step, he could feel the shadows of his past bearing down, but now they felt less like ghosts and more like guides. As he prepared to take a decisive step forward, a chilling premonition seeped in. What if Samuel didn't understand? What if his acceptance of this journey turned to ridicule? The uncertainty stirred a cocktail of anxiety and determination within him. Standing at the threshold of a new beginning, Charlie clenched his fists, ready to craft his path with the authority of his own voice. The next chapter awaited, intricately interwoven with the past he was no longer afraid to confront. But just as he resolved to contact Samuel, he received an unexpected message, one that threatened to unravel everything he had fought to build. As he read the screen, Charlie felt time stand still. What awaited him could alter the trajectory of his newfound journey permanently. Would he recognize the man who had come to embrace authenticity? Charlie's heart raced as the message glowed ominously from his phone, the stark words pulling him into a realm of uncertainty. It was from Samuel, and the bold text invited him to meet, threatening to shatter the fragile piece he had just begun to sculpt from his chaotic past. Part of him was galvanized. Another part felt the old familiar dread creeping back in. This wasn't just an invitation, it felt like a challenge. He inhaled sharply, pushing through the crowd that had thinned around him. The gallery, once a sanctuary of possibilities, now loomed like an arena. Each face he passed transformed into imagined specters of judgment, mirroring his own fears. As he stepped outside, the crisp air bit at his skin, yet it felt like a needed jolt, spurring clarity amidst his mental fog. Charlie had to strategize. Samuel was nothing if not formidable. His sharp tongue had a way of slicing through facades, exposing vulnerabilities with merciless precision. Would Charlie be equipped to withstand that scrutiny this time? The emotional pendulum swung violently in his chest as he recalled his previous confrontations with Samuel. The smirks, the pointed comments, the feeling of minimal self-worth that echoed long after the exchanges. Yet something was different now. He had embarked on a journey of discovery and authenticity. After pacing a few blocks, Charlie found a quiet park bench, the early evening light casting a warm glow through the leaves. He sat down, allowing himself a moment to breathe and gather his thoughts. Lily's encouragement looped through his mind, a gentle reminder of the clarity he had fought to reclaim. Maybe this confrontation could serve not just as a reckoning, but as a platform for affirmation, an opportunity to articulate his truth and, perhaps, to inspire Samuel to confront his own skepticism. "Okay," he murmured to himself, grounding his thoughts. "This is a conversation, not a battle." He pulled out his notebook, a tattered companion he had returned to during his exploration of self-expression. Ideas flowed like water as he jotted down key points he wanted to address: his journey, his transformation, and the unyielding acceptance of his vulnerabilities. Would Samuel hear him, or would he merely scoff and belittle what Charlie had to say? The uncertainty loomed, but there was a vibrating anticipation in the air. A call for change hung just out of reach. His pen danced across the page, crafting a roadmap for the confrontation. The simplicity of writing felt powerful. Each line felt like a brick laid in the foundation of a new narrative. Perhaps this meeting could be a chance for both men to unearth deeper layers of understanding. But doubts resurfaced. What if Samuel rejected the new Charlie? What if the past was too entrenched to allow room for growth? Those questions gnawed at him. Yet he noted how they no longer paralyzed him like they had in the past. He recognized his ability to navigate this confrontation differently, to hold the reins of his own narrative. Minutes later, the sun dipped below the horizon, yielding twilight to the world. He folded the notebook, resolutely tucking it away. With his heart thundering, Charlie stood up and looked towards where he had parked his car. Each step felt heavier than the last, but each also signaled a shift, a commitment to face his fears rather than flee from them. As he drove toward Samuel's office, the atmosphere inside felt electric, laden with the potential for a breakthrough. Yet behind that excitement loomed anxiety. What was Samuel planning to say? And just as he turned the final corner leading to the office, his phone buzzed again. A new message appeared, instantly shifting the trajectory of his burgeoning resolve. Charlie frowned, glancing at the screen. The notification was from someone unexpected, an enigma steeped in his past, one he hadn't anticipated at this juncture of his journey. The weight of the unknown settled in his gut once more, the complexities of his evolving self colliding with unresolved histories. This was no longer just a meeting with Samuel. The chain of events felt stacked against him, ready to unfurl unpredictably. Would he embrace this unexpected layer, or allow it to undermine his hard-won growth? The answer loomed just ahead, the thrill of discovery intertwined with an undercurrent of dread. Charlie could feel the walls closing in, gently yet insistently, as he arrived at his destination, standing at the brink of another confrontation that could redefine his authentic self once more. Charlie's pulse quickened, his thoughts racing as he took in the dimly lit office building before him. The flickering light of the sign buzzed impatiently, matching the turmoil inside him. The message from the past hung over him, its implications swirling like a maelstrom. Whoever had reached out held the potential to carve paths in his life he hadn't anticipated, paths that may lead him away from the confident version of himself he'd fought to cultivate. He stepped out of his car, absorbing the moment. Would he enter this confrontation whole, or would the scars of yesterday bleed into the present? The door felt heavy as he pushed it open, a physical reminder of the threshold between who he was and who he wanted to be. Moments later, he was standing in front of Samuel's office door, the nameplate gleaming with authority. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. "Come in," Samuel's voice called, deep and sure, an anchor amidst the storm. Charlie pushed the door open, steeling himself for the exchange that lay ahead. Samuel looked up, his expression inscrutable. The man had always possessed an uncanny ability to unearth secrets with a mere glance. Charlie braced himself, reminding his mind of the notes he had carried with him, the groundwork of his newfound identity. "Charlie, glad you could make it," Samuel began, nodding towards a chair. His tone was devoid of the playful sarcasm Charlie had often encountered. It made the setting feel more serious, more daunting. "Thanks for inviting me," Charlie replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He took a seat, folding his hands tightly in his lap to reduce the shaking. "Let's not dance around it," Samuel cut straight to the point, leaning forward slightly. "I've noticed you've changed, and it's not just your hair or style." The words hung between them, charged. "You've taken your time, Charlie. What's the real story?" Charlie's heart hammered in his chest. Here was the moment, the gateway through which he could step into authenticity. "I've realized that I don't want to hide anymore," he started, letting the calm from earlier return momentarily. "I've worked on my art, my writing, and I'm learning to embrace my vulnerabilities. I want to share that journey with you, because I think it represents who I am now." Samuel studied him, eyes narrowing slightly, the flicker of amusement creeping into his demeanor. "Do you really think that's enough? The art world is ruthless, and so am I when it comes to authenticity. You think you've found your... But the question is, do you think anyone else will want to hear it?" Each word landed like a salvo, shaking Charlie's newfound determination. "I can't control whether people want to hear it, but what I can control is how I express it." Charlie's voice gained strength. "I've realized my worth doesn't hinge on others' validations. It's about creating for myself first." Samuel raised an eyebrow, curiosity peaking. "Interesting perspective. But tell me the truth. Are you ready to take the heat that comes with that belief? Feeling a surge of confidence, Charlie leaned in. Yes, I am. In fact, the more I create, the more I find out what I'm truly capable of. Samuel sat back, crossing his arms. The challenge was evident in his gaze, but a spark of something more, respect, perhaps, took root. Yet, just as the tension seemed to shift, Charlie's phone vibrated in his pocket again, the ominous reminder tugging at his attention. "You're at a turning point, Charlie," Samuel continued, his voice dropping slightly to emphasize the import of the moment. "However, you must establish if you can handle two truths at once, the past and who you truly wish to be." Charlie felt the rush of anxiety resurge, the gravity of Samuel's words weighing down on him. The message on his phone buzzed again, imploring him to pay attention. It felt invasive yet crucial, a reminder of the unresolved history calling out to him. "Do I have to choose?" Charlie questioned, glancing down at the screen, disconnecting momentarily from the conversation. Would addressing the call from his past derail the progress he had made? Or was it a necessary confrontation to own all parts of himself? As Charlie's finger hovered over the screen, he sensed that the choices he was about to make might well redefine him once more, guiding him into an even deeper understanding of himself. The urgency pulsed through him, compelling as he faced Samuel's unwavering gaze. Would he lean into the evolving narrative of his life, or would he allow the shadows of yesterday to pull him back? The answers beckoned urgently, the promise of integration at stake. What awaited him on the other side of that choice? Charlie's thoughts raced as he wrestled with Samuel's piercing gaze and the relentless buzzing of his phone. Each vibration seemed to echo the question looming in the air. What would he uncover by confronting his past? A part of him felt a compulsion to dismiss the call, to maintain momentum with Samuel, but the other part recognized its potential significance. This was not just any message. It could shatter the facade he had been crafting or forge it anew. "Charlie," Samuel's voice broke through the tumult, "you can't drown out the past. It's coming for you, whether you like it or not." The truth in his words resonated deep within Charlie. Life didn't wait for him to sort through his emotional baggage. "I know," Charlie finally admitted, dropping his gaze to the buzzing, "but I can't let it paralyze me. I'm learning to confront what I've avoided." The room felt thick with possibility. The personal stakes were rising, and he could either lower himself to fear or ascend to resolve. Confrontation means facing truths about yourself, not just the past. It's messy and complicated. Are you ready for that? Samuel's tone was both challenging and supportive, pushing Charlie towards the realization that growth demanded courage. With a deep breath, Charlie decided to confront both spheres of his life, the connection he now yearned to embrace and the specter from which he previously ran. He pulled his phone from his pocket, the light illuminating the tentative hope flickering within him. "I need to take this," he declared, shocking himself with the decisiveness. Samuel nodded, his expression an intriguing mix of respect and anticipation. Charlie stepped away from the desk, feeling the weight of his choice. He pressed the button to answer, his heart pounding as he heard the familiar voice, a voice he had both missed and feared. It was his sister, Lydia. "Charlie, I didn't know if you'd pick up," she stammered, her voice trembling through the line. "Lydia," he breathed, emotions flickering like a candle in a draft. "It's been a while. What's going on?" There was a pause, thick and heavy, as if she was weighing the gravity of her words. "I don't know how to explain it. I need help. Can you come? Things aren't right here, Charlie." The unsteady tremor in her voice riveted his attention. Instantly, Charlie felt the walls of his newfound confidence begin to shake. A surge of protective instincts battled against his hesitations. "What do you mean? Are you safe?" "Not really," she whispered, the urgency spilling over. "I'll tell you everything when you get here. Please, I don't know what else to do." As uncertainty gripped him, Charlie's mind spun with the implications of this call. He had strived for personal growth, yet here stood a familiar specter, a reminder of past grievances tethering him to old patterns. Could he face the chaos that awaited him without tumbling back into despair? Growth meant addressing the profound disarray that had once dominated his life. "I'll be there," he finally promised, roiling emotions coiling within him. As he hung up, Samuel's presence felt larger in the room. There was no applause for his decision, no written guide to assure him of success. It was simply a call to action. "You're stepping into a storm, Charlie," Samuel said with measured gravitas. "Are you prepared for the power it holds?" "I have to be." Another layer of determination crystallized within him. This choice was not just about confronting their childhood, but about reshaping who he could become. "Show me what you're made of, then," Samuel said, a hint of challenge igniting in his eyes. Charlie squared his shoulders, knowing he stood at the edge of a pivotal moment, one that could propel him into realms of vulnerability and strength intertwined. As he turned to leave, he felt the electric hum of potential twitching at the edges of his consciousness. Could he embrace the chaos and redefine his relationship not only with Lydia, but also with himself? The familiar echoes of doubt thrummed in his head as he stepped out of the office. But an unfamiliar flame ignited within him, a fierce resolve to engage this chapter of his life head-on. The stakes had transformed, and so had he. The horizon beckoned, precarious yet exhilarating, as he grappled with the promise that awaited him in the confrontation of his past. In the murky depths of unresolved questions clung to the edges of his vision. Would he emerge transformed, or would the shadows pull him back into the darkness? As Charlie drove through the quiet streets towards Lydia's apartment, anxiety and determination battled within him. The weight of unresolved issues settled into the pit of his stomach, a reminder that confronting the past wasn't merely about him. It was also about healing the rifts woven into his familial ties. The glow of streetlights flashed past the window, illuminating his reflection, a man caught between two worlds. In one hand, he held the courage that had come from embracing his vulnerability through art and connection. In the other, the familiar fears that twisted into knots of insecurity. But tonight, he chose to navigate that discomfort rather than allow it to consume him. Arriving at Lydia's building, Charlie climbed the stairs with determination, each footfall echoing as a resounding affirmation of his growth. He had spent years constructing barriers to shield himself, yet now he understood the power of opening those gates, even in the face of fear. He knocked on her door, his heartbeat quickening as he awaited her response. After what felt like an age, the door creaked open, revealing Lydia's drawn face framed by worry. In the dim light, he could see the shadows of the struggles she faced. "Charlie," she whispered, relief flooding her voice as she stepped aside to let him in. "Let's talk," he said, his tone steady and firm, reflecting the new resolve he had fostered. As he stepped across the threshold, Charlie felt the walls of their shared past pressing in, yet he stood taller. He was armed with the strength of candor. "I didn't know where else to turn. Things are bad, Charlie," she started, tears brimming in her eyes. "I've been caught up in the same cycle, and it's suffocating." He settled into the worn couch, urging her to share without interruption. The words spilled from Lydia, each vulnerability shaking the foundation of their estranged relationship. As she described her struggles with addiction, financial turmoil, and deep-seated isolation, he felt horror laced with empathy. "I've tried to break free," she confessed, "but every time I think I'm out, I'm pulled back in." Charlie listened intently, feeling the rawness of her truth resonate deeply within him. The scars he had borne were not unlike her own. They were woven through their shared experiences, scheduled expectations, and unfulfilled dreams. In that moment, he realized how much he longed not only to be seen, but to truly see her, to recognize her struggles, just as he had begun to recognize his. "I understand more than you think, Lydia. I've faced my own battles," he said, his voice steadying as he leaned into the honesty that now defined him. "But I'm learning that showing up for ourselves is the first step. You deserve that fight." The two siblings exchanged glances, and in that silence they began to weave threads of understanding back together, a tapestry of support, love, and healing. The conversation evolved from one of despair to one of hope, illuminated by Charlie's newfound strength to be authentically vulnerable. "Maybe we can help each other," he proposed, the idea taking flight like a fledgling bird. "You can lean on me, and I can rekindle the passion I used to neglect. Let's navigate this together." Lydia's expression softened, the fading light sparking a hint of the bravado she had once carried. "I'd like that," she whispered, the words floating in the air, laden with the weight of promise. As the discussion unfolded, Charlie felt a stage shift within him. No longer did he fear the shadows of the past. Instead, he embraced them, welcoming their lessons into the fold. He had long sought validation in the eyes of business leaders and art critics alike, yet this was something far more profound. He was reclaiming his identity as an empathetic brother, one who would forge a path through both their pasts into a brighter future. When it was time to leave, they exchanged a warm embrace that felt foreign yet surprisingly comforting. Here, amid shared vulnerability, resurfaced the bonds of a family once tainted by secrets. And with it bloomed a newfound determination. Both had the strength to conquer their scars. As Charlie stepped into the crisp night, he felt a lightness in his chest that had been absent for years, a freedom grounded in connection and rebirth. The shadows no longer loomed as dark specters intent on invoking doubt. Now they stood behind him, as guides, illuminating the path towards authenticity. Driving home, he reflected on the night's transformation. He had not only confronted his past, he had stepped boldly into reclamation. The collective journey with Lydia served as a reminder that true growth involved harnessing both personal struggles and shared experiences, a depth of understanding he had only scratched the surface of until now. The exhibition that awaited him felt less daunting. It had morphed from an event laden with personal risk to a platform for authentic expression, his own and that of others he would uplift along the way. Inching closer to home, Charlie felt an immense surge of pride, recognizing the monumental shift. He had successfully faced his past while nurturing hope for the future. Both clarity and resilience enveloped him, a testament to the very battles he had fought and the light he now sought to share. As he parked the car, taking one last glance at the night sky, a canvas of dazzling stars, he felt a solid confidence settle within him. He had achieved something beautiful. He had embraced both his and Lydia's truths, engaging with them as portals to healing rather than barriers to fight against. Tonight marked not just a newfound relationship with his sister, but a profound individual transformation. He had learned the powerful lesson that vulnerability breeds strength, and the acceptance of one's past culminated into the triumph of ongoing growth. With a determined smile, Charlie stepped inside his home. This chapter may have closed, but he had become a man ready to face whatever awaited him next, a truth he vowed to carry forward forever. Now it's your moment. This is your call to action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how important it is to lift each other up. Make it count.